Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, and Mississippi, all southern red states, are working to redraw their House congressional maps following the Supreme Court's decision that essentially gutted the landmark Voting Rights Act of 1965.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network. The veil is off, or more to the point, the Klan hood. Let's call this what it is, a brazenly racist attack on black representation as Republican legislatures across the South show the entire nation who and what they are. First in line, Alabama and Tennessee.
Alabama became the latest state in that fight on Friday when Republicans approved plans for new primary elections pending a court decision on whether those newly drawn GOP House districts can be used in the November midterm elections. Chaotic scenes erupted at the Alabama State House as a protester was dragged from the packed House gallery by security officers. Tensions also ran high in the Tennessee state capitol this week, where protesters were removed from hearings over proposed congressional maps that overwhelmingly favored Republicans. The protests did not prevent Republican lawmakers from enacting a new map that abolishes the state's only majority black district, the only majority black district in that state. Governor Bill Lee signed the new map into law the same day.
Democrats cannot take this lying down. We need to fight back with every peaceful legal means we have. We need leaders willing to push hard to counteract these blatant attempts to deny representation. I asked Harry Dunn to join me to talk about this. Harry was one of the heroes of January 6th, defending the Capitol against Trump's mob. He later testified before Congress about that day, and he's now running for Congress. Harry's got thoughts on what the Supreme Court's decision and the Virginia court's pile-on means for the democracy he risked his life to preserve. Here's our conversation. Harry, good to see you again, as always. What a gut punch, this Supreme Court decision gutting the Voting Rights Act, limited to Louisiana, at least on paper, but you see states all over the nation now, especially in the Deep South, disenfranchising black voters, disproving the very claim that the Supreme Court made that we don't need race considerations in districting at all. If there's a silver lining, it's that the Klan hood's been removed. I was going to say the veil has been removed, but let's call it what it is in these states like Tennessee and elsewhere.
Yeah, the Voting Rights Act. So this was Lyndon B. Johnson's, legislation that passed in the 60s. So for the Supreme Court to say, hey, everything is fixed and we don't need it anymore in this short period of time, it really shows, one, how out of touch they are and just how on the wrong side of history they continue to be and show they will be. It's funny when you said the Supreme Court with the gut punch, I was like, wait, which one? Because it's just repeatedly
Virginia.
And that's the state Supreme Court there. But there's just been so many times where the people are trying to say, this is wrong, but so many of these institutions, whether it be elected officials or the Supreme Court, just telling people what's best for them instead of actually letting the people have the say and saying, hey, this is wrong. And like you mentioned, it's not just Louisiana, but that clears the way for Tennessee, basically getting rid of Memphis, or whether it be Mississippi, Alabama, and so many other states that are following suit, which shows that they were ready to pounce on this. This wasn't an issue where they say, hey, this is a priority, we have to do this. That just gave them cover to say, oh, we could draw it in our favor. And let's be clear, all of this is about Donald Trump's redistricting. That's what it started out, where it happened in Texas. But the states that did it, whether it be Democratic states that did it, whether it be California or whether it be Virginia, the main difference between California and Virginia versus all the other states, they put it up to the voters to let them decide. And apparently in Virginia, a technicality is going to keep that from going through. Not because it's not what the voters wanted, because that's how we operate in a country. And people say, yes, there were millions of people that voted against it. Sure, there are millions of people that voted against Donald Trump, but he's still the president. It's kind of like, all right, get more votes than your opponent and you win. Kind of crazy concept, right? But that's the thing that we're seeing between Democratic states doing this redistricting versus these Republican states. And it's all about suppression. Democrats, the states of Virginia and California, were doing it to keep up. Their goal was to keep up with what Donald Trump was doing by trying to continually steal elections. He's doing it in Indiana, Missouri, Texas. The list just goes on and on and on. He's doing everything he can to disenfranchise people. And that's what this ruling does the most. It disenfranchises people. And for the Supreme Court to assume that, hey, in 60 years, it's been 60 years. We don't need the Voting Rights Act anymore. In fact, we need it more today than I don't know. I didn't live back then. So I think that's disingenuous to say, but it's clear that it's needed today.
Hey everyone, it's Ken. Super quick break to remind you that I've got a Substack page. Please consider subscribing for exclusive content and bi-weekly Substack lives. And for the next month, every paid subscription goes towards my upcoming reporting trip to Ukraine. Thanks for the support. The link is below. Slava Ukraine. My guess is that the justices on the Supreme Court who thought we had reached this halcyon moment of racial parity and equity were shocked at how quickly these southern states moved on their ruling to disenfranchise black voters. But
you think they were shocked?
It's not like they weren't. I don't know. I think John Roberts is hopelessly naive. I think he lives in a bubble. And every time he talks about how surprised he is that people don't like the court and that it's becoming partisan, I think he's sincere. I think he's genuinely shocked that his rulings are received the way they are, because he's
genuinely a dumbass. He's genuinely a dumbass because listen, you're right. You living in a bubble. What world do you live in? Listen, I understand that justices and judges are supposed to be neutral and unbalanced and everything, but how can you not understand the pulse of the country that you are responsible for interpreting laws for? How can you? So he's extremely a dumbass or playing in all of our faces right now. How are you going to be the Chief Justice and be so out of touch? That is just so. I would say almost disqualifying. It does. You don't have to have, unfortunately, a conscience to be a Supreme Court judge. That's shown. But it's just really disappointing that he continues to be surprised. We're disappointed with you as a man, as a human being. He's bad. He's very bad. And I think I'm being nice when I call him a dumbass.
Well, let's talk about how brazen that partisanship can get when you look at something like the Virginia Supreme Court and that 4-3 decision to throw out the vote of Virginians. There was a section in that majority ruling where they pointed out that the vote in Virginia was close. It came down to 1.69%. I know the numbers because I did a piece on this yesterday. I interviewed Dan Helmer from the Virginia House of Delegates, who was the lead architect or one of the lead architects of this referendum. And those 4 conservative justices, Republican justices, had the gall to call out how close this popular vote was. And then with a margin of 1 vote, 1 person on the Supreme Court, throw it out and not ironic, hypocritical, and a total lack of self-awareness that what they were doing was just a betrayal of, I would argue, their oaths, but certainly a betrayal of the will of Virginians, and deeply hypocritical, especially when they're calling out how narrow the popular vote was. Infuriating.
Exactly. When you're using the narrowness of the vote to justify it, and then the narrow vote is what keeps it from happening. But the narrow vote worked in your favor this time. So, yes, it's hypocritical. And I think that's what's one of the things that's most frustrating. Listen, there are times where votes are close. And you know what? All it takes is 1 person. That's why they say every vote matters. Count every single vote, because sometimes winning by 1 vote is enough. And yes, it was very close. It was a very, very divided issue. So the people that actually voted for it, now you just disenfranchise them to appease the people that didn't want it because it's close. It's so hypocritical and it's just so frustrating. And all of this redistricting stuff that's happening is a response to Donald Trump taking a chainsaw to these districts to try to keep him in power. Democrats are responding. We're not initiating this stuff. We are responding. And this is why so many, I think, Democratic voters are just so pissed off with the establishment, with the status quo of things, just because we try to play by the rules. We try to play nice. We put it to a vote, California and Virginia. We let the people decide. Whereas Texas, Paxton and the governor down there just said, you know what? We're just going to do this. We don't care. We're going to do it. And it's just so frustrating because Democrats see that and we get pissed because we always get the short end of the stick when we try to do the right thing.
Yeah. I want to talk about that establishment in a second, especially when it comes to your race. But I'd love your thoughts on whether these Republican efforts might provoke a backlash, especially when it comes to the disenfranchisement of Black voters. I mean, the upending of the Voting Rights Act is a cataclysmic event, one of the worst Supreme Court decisions since Dred. But I wonder if these supposedly safe 8 or 9 plus Republican districts that the Republicans are crafting might not be safe in an environment where Democrats are this mad.
You know, I hate these when you talk about the racism, and because everybody in the comments, oh, why are we talking about race? I don't see race. Just vote for the best candidate. I mean, Scott Jennings was on a network the other day just talking about, well, wait, you can still vote for whoever you want. It doesn't have to be black or white. Correct. It doesn't have to be black or white. But how about people that actually represent most overall the values that represent Black people? And real quick, going back to how the Supreme Court said, hey, in 60 years, they fixed it. They did it. It actually has got worse, which was the need for the John Lewis, the Voting Rights Act was still being pushed forward, that the Republican Senate at the time refused to get, the Democratic Senate, but we needed a majority. But we didn't have that. And there's still a need for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act that if I'm elected, I'm still going to continue to fight for because we have to do it. Obviously, the Supreme Court doesn't care about voting rights for equally and equitable for everybody. So that's one of the things I just wanted to go back to that. But when you talk about how it could backfire, people have made this assumption for the long, or said this, my vote doesn't matter. My vote doesn't count. And it's kind of hard after rulings like this to have an argument to say, you know what, you're right. Like normally I could push back against that. Like, hey, yes, your vote matters. Absolutely. But it kind of really just showed that it didn't. With what happened in Virginia and with the Supreme Court's ruling it's really frustrating that, especially when Black people say it. However, we need allies. When I say we, I'm talking about Black people. They're going to need people to stand up, whether it be white people, whether it be other races, to continue to stand up and fight to help us have a voice again. And how do we do that? We win elections and put people in power that can actually change, but have a desire to change these policy issues, to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, to confirm justices that actually believe in, that can say unequivocally, hey, Donald Trump cannot run for a third term. There was a hearing that I think it was Senator Coons asked a justice and said, a judge, say, hey, can the president under the Constitution right now run for 3 terms? And the judge couldn't even say that. Like, how can somebody like that be trusted to say, we're not going to go gut Voting Rights Act? Hey, we're not going to limit a woman's choice to choose what type of health care it's asinine, but we're going to need allies. And it's going to take all of us. It's not going to take one demographic of people. It's going to take all of us united to say, hey, this is enough. We can't have this. And we have to put people in office that actually believe in giving the voice to the people who put them there.
That was an excerpt of my conversation with Harry Dunn. For the full interview, check out my Substack. The link's below. Thanks.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.